Welcome to 5 Minutes, your quick dive into the wide-ranging world of insurance, technology, and leadership. I'm Miguel Edwards, and I'll be your guide as we explore these topics that are transforming not just the insurance industry, but the business world at large. Along with sharing observations I've made over the span of my career in insurance, technology, and operations, I'll be chatting with some of the brightest minds in business and leadership. Whether you're a seasoned executive or a rising star, an industry expert, or just curious about how technology is revolutionizing insurance, this is your perfect spot for your weekly dose of insights. This is 5 Minutes. I will tell you that as I was reading your book, one of the things that occurred to me is, okay, well, I'm not going to be that guy because, I spent 20 years in corporate. I decided that I want a different mode. I want a different pace. I want something just different out of my career. And so I became a consultant, and I'm saying to myself, man, he's talking to me. All right. So now I got to read this book now, and I've got to make sure that I do all the things to live into the expectations of a consultant now. So I'm not going to be one of those additional folks that Rob calls a pretender. So I'm invested.
Well, I've known you for a long time. I mean, a lot of it's common sense, right? It's professionalism. It's having credibility, doing what you say you're going to do. It's professionalism. It's mastering basics. One of the chapters in the book is master the basics, like know at least the fundamentals of how to manage a project, of how to understand a workflow, a process, because all organizations are driven in one way or another by process.
Sure.
It's just have those really foundational skills. And I tie another analogy back to martial arts training, right? When I was a young kid, I wanted to spin and fly and kick, and I'm a gangly. You've met me. I'm 6'2", 165 pounds. I'm a gangly guy, not the most athletic fella, but I was determined, and so I joined a karate class in college, and for a year, I mean, it was just like the Karate Kid. It was a year of going across the dojo floor back and forth, and for 3-hour workouts back and forth, 3 days a week, sometimes 4 days a week, like insane workouts that I could never get through today. And it was just like Ralph Macchio in the Karate Kid. It was like, when are we going to get to the good stuff? I want to go, fly and kick somebody in the head. And it took, 3 or 4 years of mastering those basics before I could start to take the next step, and then the next step, and the next step, and you build upon it. And then I got my black belt, 4 years later or whatever. It's the same idea. It was a perfect metaphor for any profession. Like, how do you become that person who has that kind of cachet that they can get those kind of clients? Well, you're not going to walk into Microsoft on day one and tell them how to reorganize or tell them what their strategy should be. There's a little bit of seasoning that is probably called for before you can expect to do that.
You talked about the pretenders. And so those are kind of like the one-offs that kind of come out of the industry and then they hang the shingle. But you also spent a little bit of time highlighting a couple of specific use cases or case studies, I should say, highlighting a specific set of case studies around some of the bigger shops that are bona fide consultants that go through that consulting training, but they still don't deliver the value, or they don't eyes in the best interest, or there's something still wrong there. Talk a little bit about what you mentioned there.
And I don't like to dwell too much on this. I mean, and McKinsey is a great example. I have the utmost respect for McKinseyites and the McKinsey culture, and Marvin Bower, who kind of came in after James McKinsey passed away in the 1930s. And took that firm in a very particular direction and popularized the Master of Business Administration as a degree that was an attempt, like we're trying to do, to create a profession out of management consulting. Yet their hunger for more dollars, their hunger for bigger fees, they kind of rode that. Bauer, retired, and then he passed away. And the firm has some very notable black marks, notable blemishes, not least of which is the opioid epidemic, where they advised the pharmaceutical industry how to promote opioids and how to spin the high rates of death around young abusers, and how to kind of thwart the mothers and fathers who are mourning the loss of their children. And they, it was I don't know what it was hundreds of millions of dollars I think they generated. I speak about they were hired by New York City Department of Corrections to figure out how to alleviate violence at Rikers Island, a notoriously violent prison. And it was, I think, a $27 million engagement, which is staggering to me. And Rikers implemented McKinsey's recommendations, and violence went up. There was more violence. So it's those kinds of things that give our industry a black eye.
Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share it with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.